Welcome, Drink with James, episode 161. I have this glass here from my friends at I'm going to look at it. It's Simply. They sent me these crazy glasses that sit on their sides, and it's kind of fucking with my head a little bit when I go to put it down. You kind of have to lay it there. So I want to first thank my friends for these strange but lovely glasses. And, I appreciate someone that goes above and beyond, right? Many of you send me whiskey and I appreciate it. They went a step further and sent me something to put the whiskey in. Although today's a rosé day, because we have a client event tonight for a few hours in the office, and my friend Arch, who's a super talented bartender, is up there right now making a tequila punch, which I am sure have never really had a night that involved punch that ended well, because they're generally just so delicious and drinkable that you get into trouble. So we're starting it off early with a little tipsy glass and some rosé. This is the second one of the week, but I am feeling high energy. Sometimes I'm feeling a little despondent and cranky when I have to do two, but I'm feeling good. I was thinking about what am I going to talk about for the intro, and when is this thing coming out? And something that's started to come up more is Fashion Week. We are maybe a little less than a month away from Fashion Week. I think 3 weeks till it starts. Maybe some of you have booked your flights already. Maybe some of you are thinking, should I come? Should I not come? I think there's a lot of people that will write pieces that say Fashion Week is dead and you don't need to come, and a lot of people who will say it's still super important for an influencer to be there. I think it's only as important as you make it. I think you can be wildly successful and have a great career and never go to a fashion week. I think you can do, New York, London, Milan, and Paris every year and completely crush it. I think it is totally kind of up to you what you want to do, but it's also a time, I think, when our industry is most like high school. I think there is no time in the year where people feel more they're part of the cool kids table or they're not. And I know a lot of people who have said that, they've stopped going because they just felt shitty about themselves. Because they didn't feel cool, they didn't feel like they're going to the right shows or wearing the right clothes or walking out of the shows with the right influencers or going to drinks with the right cool people. And it's just a good reminder that it's all fucking bullshit and none of that actually matters. And I've run this business for 7 years now, and Fashion Week is, to us, completely meaningless. I don't go to a single event, I don't go to a single show. Now, I caveat that. I do think I will go to the Harper's Bazaar Icons event because it's black tie. It's being sponsored by my friends at Cartier. It is a very chic, lovely evening. So that's different. That's Harper's Bazaar Icons. That has nothing to do with Fashion Week in my mind. That's just fantastic, and I will definitely be there. But the rest of it just doesn't matter. If you enjoy it and you like looking at clothes, and let me tell you, the first time I went to a show, I was shooting Oscar de la Renta. I had never been to a fashion show. I loved it. I thought that it was so cool to see someone who is a rare talent and genius create a world, and you spend 10 to 14 minutes inside of their brain in this world that they create. And I think it is so beautiful and such a cool thing if you like clothes and you feel that clothes are more than just something to cover your body with, then I think shows can be amazing. But I only went to Oscar de la Renta and Tom Brown, and I wasn't just doing 10 shows a day ever. So I could be seen and change outfits. That's a hustle that you either enjoy or you don't, and I wouldn't put too much emphasis on it. I just don't think in the grand scheme of your businesses that Fashion Week really matters. But if you enjoy it and you can create engaging content, fucking go crazy. And we can talk a little bit more about, well, let's say this. If you have any questions that are Fashion Week related, or, let's try and answer some of those over the coming weeks. So throw it in the comments, email us, DM us, whatever it is. Any Fashion Week related questions, we'll get to them. And then I think we'll also try and pull some data and see how posts generally perform during Fashion Week for people that are there. My inclination and guess is that they perform worse than posts outside of Fashion Week, but we'll see if that is true or not. So with that, let's move into questions. Question number one is a very long question, but it was essentially somebody who is asking, what to do with all of the unsolicited gifting they're getting. In this case specifically, the influencer had put some of the gifted items onto Poshmark to sell, and the brand called them out on it, but was wondering, with the volume of stuff that influencers are getting now, what are you supposed to do with all of it, and kind of what is acceptable in the industry versus what is frowned upon. So for this one, I actually reached out to Sydney, who has been on our show, right? Yeah. Sydney from Fohr, who does a lot of the work for VUV. I reached out to her. She's been on the show, and I just wanted to get the perspective of someone who is at a brand, and we chatted about it for 10 minutes today, and we're pretty aligned. I think that one thing is brands are, I think the smart agencies and brands increasingly are doing less unsolicited gifting than they did in the past, and there is a trend in the industry towards relationships and brands wanting to build relationships with influencers instead of just like what I'd call spray and pray, of just like send out a bunch of shit and hope people post it, which is still totally common and probably more common than not. But I look at Fohr as a leader, and the fact that they're actively saying, hey, we're doing less of the spray and pray, I think that that's going to generally be a trend. Now, if you get stuff that you don't want, you probably can't stop the flow of packages out there. And I think I understand, as an influencer, not wanting to say, hey, I'm not taking any gifting, because if Dior is sending another, round of saddlebags around, like, you're gonna want in on that. And there's probably a lot of stuff that you get that you feel really fortunate and lucky to get. So it's tough to say, hey, I don't accept gifting. There are big influencers I know that say that they just straight up don't accept gifting because it creates an expectation. I think that's, something to consider as an influencer, is that unfortunately when someone sends you something, they're expecting you to post about it. So even if you don't like it, they're probably gonna follow up. And I know it causes, stress that, again, you didn't really ask for, but you have to deal with, right? And you don't wanna say, hey, don't send me anything, because if a brand reps, if there's someone at a PR agency and they have 10 brands they rep, and you say, hey, I don't actually want gifting anymore, you may like the 9 other brands they rep, just not the one they sent you. So it's a kind of difficult line to toe as an influencer of when do you say, no, how do you stop the flow from being overwhelming, and then what do you do with all this stuff that you don't want? In talking to Sydney, and we were aligned on this, I think that honesty and candor are always appreciated in the industry. And I think if you get something and you really don't want it or you can't use it, reaching out respectfully saying, hey, thank you so much for thinking of me, I really appreciate it. I know these things I know these products aren't cheap, and it's not something that aligns with my taste, and so is there any way you could send me a return packing slip so I could send it back to you? They may do that, and you send it back. They may say, you know what, don't worry about sending it back. You can just give it to a friend or whatever, or keep it. Regardless, in that case, you've asked. You've said, okay, hey, I don't want this. And certainly, as an influencer, you shouldn't be expected to pay to ship it back to them yourself. But you're saying, hey, I don't want this, and I know it's not free, and maybe there's somebody that would want it, so can you just give me a return packing slip so I can send it back to you? They will probably say no, and then I think you're much more free to do what you want. But I understand the brand perspective, and Sydney agreed that finding your product for sale is a tough position that you're putting the brand, the agency rep or the brand person in, right? Because they had to get you approved probably, and they probably said, hey, I think this person's great and we should send them this thing. And they sent it, and then the VP of marketing is on Poshmark the next week, and they see the brand new limited edition thing that they sent you up on Poshmark. They send a note to their brand contact saying, what the hell? Like, why is this thing for sale? And now that person is in trouble. And again, I understand it from the influencer side, because it's like, you didn't ask for this shit, right? And sure, I'm sure you guys give some stuff away to family. I'm sure you give some stuff away to charity, give it away to friends, give it to people on your team. But the volume is so much that there's things that you're probably like, you know what, I'm gonna sell this because I didn't ask for it, and it's a $1,000 coat, and I can get $500 on Poshmark, and I get that. But fair or unfair, when they sent that to you, there was an expectation. The expectation is that you're going to post about it. And again, that's not necessarily a fair expectation, and I think brands should always do opt-in gifting. I think that they should be reaching out and asking you if you want something before they send it to you. But I don't think that putting it up for sale is the right thing to do if you want to continue to have a relationship with that brand. I think if they catch you selling it, it is going to be hard to explain that, and it's going to be hard to repair that relationship. Now, if you said to them, hey, can you send me a return packing slip? I don't like this. Much nicer way than that, but that's the gist. And they say, no, it's not worth sending you a packing slip, you just keep it. Then can you sell it? I think you're probably more in the clear to sell it. You have done your best to try and return it and do the right thing. They have said no. That feels not like permission, but I would feel better putting that up there, because if they found it, then you could be like, oh, I'm so sorry, like I tried to send it back. I told you that like it wasn't my taste, so I just, figured I'd sell it. Sorry if that's a problem. You're in like a more defensible position than just not selling it. Nobody likes to be made a fool of, and you have to put yourself in the brand's position. Even though they're putting you in an unfair position, doesn't mean you should do the same. And it's going to come down on that brand person if their boss's boss or their client finds that, the gifting that they're doing that you talked them into, now a bunch of those clothes are up on Poshmark. And I'm telling you, the brands do check it. The fact that the person who asked this question, the fact that they are checking means that like this is a thing brands are looking at, and I just don't think it's worth ruining a relationship for whatever you're going to make on the clothes. So try and send it back. If not, do what you will with it. Question number 2 is, what do you do if you find out a brand is using your image in an ad without your permission? Look, I'm calling all the experts in today. I called my friend Jess Hoffman. It's not her last name anymore. That's her old name. Her name is Jessica. Oh gosh. You know what? I'm sorry, Jess and Max. I officiated your wedding, so I should definitely know your last name as I married you. But I was focused on other things that day, like remembering the entire little speech that I wrote. It's like Miller Max made, something like that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Jess is amazing. She's a fantastic lawyer and specializes a lot in contracts and usage and things like trademarks and things like this. So I asked Jess, what do you do? First thing was like, you don't necessarily want to start, you don't necessarily want to start super aggressive, right? Yes, that brand is in the wrong. There is no situation in which a brand should be using your likeness in an advertisement without your permission written in a contract. 100%. There's no excuse for it. So you want to first send a cease and desist and say, hey, you're using my image. This is a problem. I need you to take this down immediately. I think that for me, I would treat digital ads differently than print, something in print. So I think if it shows up in an Instagram ad, that sucks, but it's harder for you to do anything other than say, hey, take this down. And look, if you don't start in really hard on the brand and you don't come in being like, I'm gonna sue your ass, like strap in, I do think you can use it to say, hey, obviously you guys like this image. Would you be interested in buying it from me? And we talked a little bit about usage rights in a few shows ago. I think a good kind of metric is for 60 days of usage, half of what you would charge for a sponsored post. So maybe in good faith they'll tell you how long they were running the ad, and maybe they'll back pay you for it. But you could use it as a sales opportunity to say, hey, you're obviously, you enjoy my likeness, you like my photos. How about we work together? How about you buy this photo? How about we work together on a future sponsored post? That's why I would say don't go in hard to begin with. You have the law on your side, so you don't have to be really aggressive in the beginning because you will always win the argument if it came to court. So they're going to take the digital ad down, and I think it's harder to claim damages on a digital ad just because you'd have to see exactly how much spend they put behind it, how long has it been out in the world, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't be as concerned, personally. Now, let's talk about print, okay? The problem with print is, if they put something in print and it goes out to, 500,000 people, they can't take those magazines back. They can't. That's already out there, and they should have paid you, and there's no way for you to get that money back. So in that case, I would again, send them a letter, and I would absolutely push for money. I had a friend who, a magazine, not even a very big magazine, used his image, like he's a photographer, and he had uploaded one of his images in Google as like connected to a restaurant, like he was a user photo in a Google search result for a restaurant, and a magazine, fairly large food magazine, wrote a little blurb on that restaurant and used his photo without crediting him, and I think he got $15,000 from them. Now, this was a national magazine, but if somebody is using your likeness or your photo in print without your permission, there are very clear kind of standard usage rights that say, how long they use it, how big the circulation is, and it's pretty easy to find what that would cost for them to buy it. And I think you're absolutely in the right to push them to pay you for what they would have had to pay you had they used the image in the correct way, which was reaching out and buying it from you. So that was Jess's advice. And I tend to agree that I think there's this idea sometimes that when you're wronged and you're trying to get what you want, that being really angry is the way to get it done. And there are certainly times where, passionate disagreement or a little bit of anger can help move your cause along. But I generally find, again, this is a small industry, that giving people the benefit of the doubt and going into it assuming it was just a mistake and it was not it was not because they were trying to screw you over is the right way to go about it. Because again, end of the day, if you want to keep pushing it, you've got the law on your side and there's nothing they can do about it. So you at least give them the opportunity to do the right thing before, ranting and raving and turning it into a tense situation before it needs to be. Because the one thing that, especially a bigger brand has that you don't, is that, they can exhaust their legal team and they can pay legal fees much bigger than you can, And if it's a bigger amount of money that you're fighting for, these companies can throw a bunch of lawyers at it and can kind of outgun you, or you could be in a position where you're paying thousands or tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees, which, is just not a situation you want to be in. So I find if you give people the opportunity to do the right thing, sometimes they surprise you. Sometimes they don't. But question number 3 is my thoughts on the recent Tumblr acquisition, which is acquisition number 2, I think. This is the second time they've been bought. So you all know, or maybe you don't, but I'm only sitting here because of Tumblr. Tumblr completely changed my life. It was the first thing in my adult life that I felt like good at. It was the first place in New York that I experienced any sort of success. My career and life in New York until then had been pretty mediocre and honestly disappointing. Talk a bit about that in Foreground episode 1 with Tim, if you hadn't listened to it. But Tumblr was a really special place for me. It's where I got more confident in my creativity, in my writing, certainly in my photography. And it was this amazing community of really supportive, interesting people who, many of whom I'm still very close with today. I mean, the guy who's making drinks for our event tonight, my friend, I met him through Tumblr. Tim, I think, found out about Fohr because he followed my Tumblr. There's probably, a handful of people that work at this company because they used to read my blog. So I love Tumblr, and I was really sad to see it die. I'm not sad it got sold for $3 million because it's been dead for so long. But to sell 5 years ago for $1.1 billion and then this week to sell for $3 million. Oh, it's a cautionary tale for what can and generally does happen to platforms. When we started this company, Instagram was a joke. It was just a total non-factor. Tumblr was really all people talked about. We really, started the company because you couldn't see how many followers someone's Tumblr had. And when we started this company, Instagram was pretty much a non-factor. It was fairly new, and nobody really cared about it. And a big reason we started the company is that you would find a Tumblr that you liked, and you had no way to know how many followers they had. So by connecting to Fohr through an API, we could show how many followers a Tumblr account had, and that was really one of the big key features and benefits of Fohr, and one of the reasons that we started. And so to have, in that short amount of time, the platform go from dominance to a joke is heartbreaking and shocking. And I think that should be a wake-up call that, while Instagram and Facebook have a lot more money, a lot more power, and generally are better run organizations than Tumblr ever was, and I think have much more staying power, obviously, Instagram will never maintain its hold on culture that it has today in perpetuity. It is just not possible. It's just not how culture works. And Tumblr is a small example, I think, of what you can, expect for Instagram in the coming decade. And a reminder to everyone that you need to diversify, that you need to try new platforms, and you need to understand that, to have a long career in this space is going to mean constant reinvention and is going to mean having to figure out a way to take your audience with you, not only through your own life changes of aging and maybe starting a family or moving cities or whatever it might be, changing tastes, but also in and out of new platforms. And I cannot stress enough that hope is not a strategy, and you can't just hope that Instagram will continue to be as popular as it is today, because it's just never going to happen. And if you don't have a contingency plan, I would freak out now, because you still have time to fix it. Because we have years before something catastrophic is going to happen to Instagram, but it absolutely will. And if you don't have a plan or you're not working on one today, then I would just subtly start to freak out. So, if I wasn't afraid of staining my beautiful 60-year-old desk, I would pour out some of this rosé for Tumblr, for what it used to be, for what it did for my life, for all the people that I have met. It was a beautiful time in the internet, my favorite time of the internet, and I look back on it fondly. And David Karp, you don't watch this show. We had drinks once. You probably don't know who the fuck I am, but I thank you, and I bid you adieu.